It looks like I am live. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Tammy Morrison, and I am here because I want to read from one of my new favorite books, Psychic Perceptions by Dr. Joseph Murphy. So I've been reading this book probably for the last few weeks. I'm now on chapter 14. If you haven't caught all the rest of them, you can catch them on Facebook or on YouTube, both of them. I think both of all the chapters are there. So this is chapter 14, How Your Perception Brings You Wonders of Disciplined Imagination. The following are perceptive statements on the subject of imagination made by many great thinkers. We are all of us imaginative in some form or other, for images are the brood of desire. Imagination rules the world. The soul without imagination is what an observatory would be without a telescope. Oh, wow. H.W. Beecher. Imagination rules the world. Napoleon. Thought convinces, feeling persuades. If imagination furnishes the fact with wings, feeling it's the great stout muscle which flies them and lifts them from the ground. Thought sees beauty, emotion feels it. Theodore Parker. Imagination, the image-making power common to all who have the gift of dreams. I.R. Lowell. Imagination disposes of everything. It creates beauty, justice, and happiness, which are everything in the world. Pascal. Imagination is the eye of the soul. Joubert. The poet's eye in a fine frenzy rolling doth glance from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven, and as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shape and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. Shakespeare. Imagination is more powerful than knowledge. Albert Einstein. The dictionary defines imagination as the action of forming mental images or concepts of what is not actually present to the senses. All right, I'm going to share this out real quick. Okay. All right. Let's see. Imagination is one of the primal faculties of your mind, and like any other power, you can use it constructively or destructively and reap results according to the way you use your mental images. In this chapter, the author refers to disciplined, controlled, and divinely directed imagination. When you use your imaginative power wisely and harmoniously, you can project and clothe your ideas, plans, and purposes, giving them visibility on the screen of space. How she made the impossible possible. Some months ago, I had a long telephone conversation with a woman in Georgia, whom we shall call Mrs. X. She said that because of the high interest rates and the high price for her home, the real estate agents had not been able to get a single client even to look at it. Her husband had passed on and she was living alone in the house while at the same time suffering from financial stress and strain due to her inability to keep up payments and taxes. I gave her the following simple technique. Sit still, relax, and mobilize your attention and focus your mind's eye on the check for $100,000, which is what you want for the house. Touch the check with your imaginary hands. Feel and perceive its reality. Give thanks for it and repeat this mental movie for 4 or 5 minutes several times a day. Gradually, you will find the image will sink into your subconscious mind. When you succeed in conveying the mental image to your subconscious, the latter will bring it to pass. A few weeks went by and Mrs. X wrote saying that she had sold the house to a research professor who had come from New York with his 4 children. He saw that it was the ideal home for him. She said that she had become very sleepy and had imagined a check for 100,000 made out in her name. And had imagined the check for 100,000 made out in her name. And in her imagination, she had gone into the local bank and deposited it. All this had taken place in her mental imagery. She had done this for 4 or 5 minutes at intervals of 1 hour each day for 2 weeks. After that, she had had no further desire to dramatize the event in her mind, as a feeling of peace and relaxation had come over her, and she knew intuitively that her prayer was answered. The professor saw the sign for sale by owner, and the minute he walked in the door, he said, "This is it. Remember that your imagination, when disciplined, spiritualized, controlled, and directed, becomes the most exalted and noblest attribute of man." How a widow of 72 banished loneliness. During an interview with Mrs. M, I listened while she gave me all the reasons why she could not get married, instead of all the reasons why she could. Mrs. M complained that although she had written for prayers to all the New Thought churches to pray for the right husband for her, all the effort had come to naught. She said that her children were grown up, married, and living as far as 3,000 miles away, and that while she had met many widowers in her retirement city, no one had proposed to her. At my suggestion, Mrs. M practiced an imaginary scene wherein she pictured and felt herself to be in my study where I was conducting the marriage ceremony. She heard my voice saying, "I now pronounce you man and wife." In this imaginary drama, she felt the imaginary ring on her finger. She dramatized this picture in her mind over and over again until she felt it to be so real that when she opened her eyes, she had the feeling that she wasn't in her own home, but actually in my study. What had happened was that she had made the whole mental imagery so actual and vivid that she embodied it subconsciously and had no further desire to repeat the mental drama. She developed a high sense of perception. Shortly afterward, on a trip to visit her son in New York City, Mrs. M met a wonderful retired physician on the train. While she was in New York, he invited her out a few times and shortly thereafter proposed marriage, which she accepted. She had used her imagination wisely by perceiving the end, the finished day. Then her subconscious had brought it to pass in its own way. By hearing the words, "I now pronounce you man and wife," and by feeling the imaginary ring on her finger, she had implied to her subconscious that she was already married mentally to the ideal man who harmonized with her in every way. When you pray, contemplate the happy ending, rejoice in it, and you will experience the joy of the answered prayer. How her perception established the mental equivalent of $1 million. I had the most amazing telephone call from the husband of a woman whom we shall call Mrs. H, saying, "My wife just inherited $1 million. You told her what to do." Naturally, I congratulated him and wished for both of them, all the blessings of life. Whew, excuse me. I recall talking to her one Sunday after a lecture at the Wilshire Ebel Theater in Los Angeles, at which time she had said that she wanted $1 million for a creative project, which was very sound and constructive. I explained to her that she first had to establish the mental equivalent of $1 million in her mind, and that she could do this by getting intensely interested in the finished project, looking at it in her mind, rejoicing in all the accomplished fact, and giving thanks for the wonder of it all. She pictured the end in her mind, made it very vivid and real, and every night prior to sleep, she would affirm a million, a million, a million, a million, a million, a million, over and over again as a lullaby until she fell asleep, knowing her subconscious must sooner or later accept it. At the end of the month, she was advised by an attorney that she had inherited over $1 billion. Mrs. H had done what Shakespeare said. She gave to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. Through frequent habitation in her mind, she succeeded in making it a reality, and her subconscious brought it to pass in ways she knew not of. How to become acquainted with the perceptive designer within you. Within you are a designer, an architect, and a weaver. They take the image of your mind and mold it into a pattern of life, which brings you peace, joy, and victory. The greatest and richest galleries are the galleries of the mind devoted to wisdom, truth, and beauty. Picture your ideal in life. Live mentally with this ideal. Let the ideal captivate your perceptive imagination. You will move in the direction of the mental image which governs your mind. The ideals of life are like the dew of heaven which move over the arid areas of your mind, refreshing and invigorating you. With your disciplined imagination, you can soar above all appearances, discord, and sense evidence and imagine the way things ought to be while realizing the sublime principle of harmony operating through, in, and behind all things. Reject the evidence of your senses and realize that the inside controls the outside. The mental image is the reality or the inside, and its external manifestation or form is the outside. Why he called perceptive imagination the workshop of God. Recently, I had lunch with an extraordinary young man whom we shall call JJ. He is the radio and communication field. He has been reading Your Infinite Power to Be Rich, and he said, I could quote it by heart. His avocation on weekends is to take his wife to Caliente racetrack. He had been in the habit of losing $10 to $15 weekly at the track, and his wife has said to him that he should use his subconscious mind and win a large sum so they could buy a new home in Beverly Hills. Accordingly, he began to still his mind every night for about 15 minutes in a quiet and passive way. He would imagine the cashier giving him a check for $50,000 and saying to him, Boy, you're lucky. He felt himself at the cashier's window and he imagined hearing the voice of the cashier. He looked at the check, touched it with his imaginary hands, and rejoiced and gave thanks for it. In his vivid, intense, dramatic, and imaginative way, he showed the check to his wife, saying, Honey, the house you wanted is yours. In this imaginary drama, she would exclaim, It is wonderful, over and over again. He rehearsed this drama in his mind night after night for about a month. He said that sometimes the scenic drama was so real, vivid, and seemingly tangible that when he opened his eyes, he was amazed to find himself in his bedroom instead of on the racetrack. The state of mind is indicative of success in conveying the picture to the subconscious mind. The fifth week after beginning the above mentioned technique, he went to Caliente and was, as he said, absolutely confident that he would get the check he had pictured and felt as true subjectively. He bet rather large sums on 6 races, and they are all winners. As he presented his tickets to the cashier gave him a check for $50,000, saying to him exactly as he has subjectively affirmed every night for a month, Boy, you're lucky. He is now living in a lovely home in Beverly Hills for which he paid the $50,000 received at Caliente. Because of a vast increase in the value of real estate in the last few years, it is now worth double that price. He and his wife have never been to the races since that day several years ago, as they are too busy working every day in the radio and television field, helping to heal the wounds of man. Sir Winston Churchill once said, This is an age in which the mental attitude decides the fortunes of people rather than the fortunes decide the mood. The ancient Hebrew said, Imagination is the workshop of God. Psychic perceptions is your key to constructive imagination. Points to remember. 1. Your psychic imagination is your capacity to form mental images or concepts of what is not actually present to the physical senses. Imagination is one of the foremost faculties of your mind. When disciplined, it enables you to clothe your ideas, dreams, or aspirations and project them on the screen of space. Regardless of evidence of senses, you can imagine that you have sold your home. Feel the reality of the sale mentally, looking at the imaginary check in your imaginary hands, feeling it, rejoicing in it, repeating the drama over and over again until you sense the subjective reality of it. You will know when you have succeeded in conveying the mental picture in your mind, the reason being that a sense of peace and inner knowing arises, whereby you know that you know. It is an intuitive awareness. A simple technique in attracting the right marriage partner was employed by a 72-year-old widow. All she did was to imagine that I was in front of her in my study, and in her imagination, she heard me say over and over again, I now pronounce you man and wife. She felt the imaginary ring on her finger, which implied to her that she was already married. The whole mental movie, which she dramatized repeatedly, intensively, and joyously, conveyed to her that she was already married to the ideal man who harmonized with her in every way. After a few weeks, she actually met the man of her dreams, and they were married. The law is that whatever you imagine and feel to be true sinks into your subconscious mind, which in turn brings it to pass. A woman wanted $1 million for a wonderful project for herself and her husband. She realized she had to establish the mental psychic equivalent before she could receive it. Accordingly, every night she would imagine she was looking at the finished project and giving thanks for the wonders of it all. At the same time, she would silently, feelingly, knowingly lull herself to sleep every night with the one word million, knowing that her subconscious mind was aware it was $1 million she needed. At the end of a month, her husband called me saying, "My wife just inherited $1 million out of the blue." She had succeeded in establishing the mental and psychic equivalent in her subconscious mind by reiterating a million over and over again and by picturing the completed $1 million project. She knew that ideas are conveyed to the subconscious by repetition. Picture your ideal in life. Live mentally with this ideal, and you will move in the direction of the ideal which governs your mind. A young radio engineer wanted to buy a home for his wife and didn't have the money. His avocation was a study of the racing sheet and betting $10 or $15 weekly, but with negative results. He read Your Infinite Power to Be Rich, one of my popular books, and he began to use his imagination wisely, constructively, and judiciously. He imagined himself at the cashier's window at Caliente Racetrack, receiving a check for $50,000, and felt the solidity and tangibility of the cashier's cage. In his vivid imaginary scene, the cashier said to him, "Boy, you're lucky." In about a month's time, he succeeded in impregnating his subconscious mind, and on subsequently visiting the racetrack, he literally won $50,000. All right, so tomorrow I will start on reading on chapter 15, How to Know the Mysterious Perceptive Powers of Your Mind. And let me write that down. 15, How to Know the Mysterious Perceptive Power of Your Mind tomorrow. Okay. Hey, Tiffany, thank you for joining. I am so excited about reading these books, because I don't know about y'all, but I get so much out of them. They are really helping me. I've really began to use that imagination process to my advantage. And I also wanted to share, I um, manifested two cars. I manifested two cars, and my one car had died and the engine had seized. And so when the people called us to tell us, I immediately reframed that. And I said that they're going to call us back and they're going to say, we're going to replace the engine at no cost to you. And that was exactly what she said. It psyched me so bad that I decided that it's time for me to do that in other areas of my life. And so that's what I'm doing. And this book has really helped me to do that. So I'm super excited to be here reading this book. And I thank you for joining me. Those of you that catch the replay, it's amazing. Join me tomorrow night for Ebony and Ivory on spiritual growth. I will be talking to my friend Megan. It's going to be amazing. I cannot wait. And then I think Friday night we do Dynamic Duo with Sean White. That's going to be amazing. I absolutely love it. If you are looking for help, you're looking for healing, you're looking for my brand of medicine, reach out to me. We can have a session and we can talk about what it is that you need. These sessions are complimentary. It's called Unleash, my Spirit Awakening session. So if that's something that you are interested in, comment below and we can get on the call and we can talk about whatever it is that you desire and what you need and see if it's something that I can help you with. So again, thank you for joining me. I will drop the link in the comments on both of these videos on Facebook and on YouTube. This way, if you decide and you would like to hey Rachel, thank you for joining. I'm not pulling cards today, but reach out to me and we'll see what we can do. Yeah, I actually have to get off because I have a call like in like 2 minutes. So again, thank you for joining me. It's been a blast. Always, tomorrow I will come back on and read chapter 15. I think it was chapter 15, How to Know the Mysterious Perceptive Power of Your Mind, from Dr. Joseph Murphy's Psychic Perception. So again, thank you for joining me. It's been a blast. Bye now. Oh, Lord.